And you're back with the Rocket Right Show. I'm Dr. Kay Solar in the house with Hurricane Betsy Barnes. And our medical segment is brought to you each week by Mary Bird Perkins, Our Lady of the Lake Cancer Center. And we're so glad to have with us Cyndi Knox. Thank you, Cyndi.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, she is the Director of Clinical Research at Mary Bird Perkins, Our Lady of the Lake Cancer Center. And I think it is National Cancer Research Month.
It is National Clinical Trials Month in May.
Yeah, and so a lot of people have heard the word clinical trials and, just talk about it, because I think a lot of people have a misperception about what that really is.
Right. Well, and clinical trials have been in the news a lot lately with the development of the COVID-19 vaccines. So a lot of people are hearing about it. But a clinical trial is a process that a drug has to go through in order to get approval to be used for an indication. So for us, it's cancer. So whether it's a brand new drug or whether it's an existing drug that may be used in a new indication, it has to go through this process of clinical trials in order to get FDA approval to be used for standard of care use.
Right. And Liz, why is that so important?
Well, it's important because it's how we move the needle in cancer treatment. So when patients participate in clinical trials, we can develop new treatments and improve outcomes for patients. So maybe what we were using 5 or 10 years ago, maybe we're not using, or maybe we've enhanced that treatment with another drug. And through the clinical trial process, we're able to do that.
So I know that y'all are big on the clinical trials. What kind of trials does the Cancer Center offer currently? So
there's a wide variety of trials. So we have treatment trials for a lot of the different cancer types, colon, breast, lung, melanoma, and on, and they're all listed on our website. But we also have clinical trials that people may not think about, like in survivorship. Maybe if adding yoga to a patient's regimen, will that help with insomnia? Or maybe weight loss and eating better. Will that help breast cancer patients who maybe are overweight not have a recurrence of their cancer?
Right.
So we look at not just treating the cancer, but how can we prevent it from coming back, and how can we help patients live healthier after they've finished treatment?
Like many people, I had no idea that would be part of a clinical trial. I thought it was only the development of medication or treatment or maybe radiation or chemo or something like that. I did not know it was things like adding yoga to help insomnia, or and the nutritional part I probably knew, but I think a lot of people think it's only the treatment.
Right.
Well, because when statements are made, and there's been statements made that if you had good nutrition to where you lowered your body fat, you could reduce your risk of recurrence. Those aren't just random statements pulled out of the hat. Those were obtained through clinical trials where that data was collected, so that is an accurate statement. Now, if someone, you have different clinical trials that have happened over time. What are some of the current ones? I mean, are there ones that are currently ongoing that folks should think about?
So we currently, and really at any point in time, we have anywhere from 30 to 50 clinical trials open. And
That's amazing.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Those are some crazy numbers. That's a lot.
Well, and studies open and close because there'll be an enrollment goal. So when the study meets an enrollment goal, it'll close to new enrollment, but we're constantly opening new studies. But so studies of interest right now, I mean, we have so many, but I'll highlight, we have a agreement right now with Neuromedical Center, so we're working in collaboration with them right now on a study for glioblastoma. So we're
That's
adding,
wonderful.
And
we've lost a few friends to that.
We have, and we heard a little bit about that when we had one of the docs from Neuromed on talking about that. So.
Right. Dr. Olson is the PI on that. And so that's something that we have for those patients. We also have breast and GYN clinical trials over at the Breast and GYN Cancer Center on the Women's Hospital campus. We have, talking about different types of studies, we have studies that look at the financial toxicity of a cancer diagnosis. So what is a financial toxicity? So what that's looking at is, are patients able to maintain their jobs once they've been diagnosed with cancer? Are they able to keep the insurance that they had before they were diagnosed with cancer? Do they have to borrow money from family or friends to go through their treatments or to pay their rent? So we look at all different types of things, and like I said, all of our clinical trials are listed on our website.
Yeah, and so that website would be
marybirdlake.org, and you can also reach us through email, clinical research at marybird.org, and we also have a dedicated line in our research department, which is 225-215-1353.
Yeah, because so much information, we can't even talk about it all. But I know that y'all recently got a pretty large grant that the Cancer Center and LSU Health Center New Orleans. Tell us about what's going on with that as far as clinical trials.
So we got a grant from the NCI, and it does involve Mary Bird Perkins and LSU Health New Orleans, LSU Shreveport, and other partners. And what that was is a $13.6 million grant that came into Louisiana that helps the Louisiana and Gulf South residents be able to participate on nationally funded clinical trials through the National Cancer Institute.
Did you
That
say
is great.
13.6 million?
Yes.
Wow, that's tremendous. That's going to help so many people.
It
We know a
is.
couple of people right now going through treatment at Mary Bird.
Yeah.
And it allows patients to receive quality care on clinical trials in their local community. They don't have to go out of state to get on a clinical
Right.
trial. Through grants like that and through generous supporters in our local area, we're able to offer clinical trials right here in Baton Rouge.
Yeah.
Wow,
I think
I'm
that's
blown
great
away
because a
by
lot
that.
of times people think they got to go to a big cancer center way up north or here or there. And, I think a lot of people have come to realize that y'all are just cutting edge right here in town and have so much to offer. And it's so much better to be around your loved ones when you're going through those treatments.
It is.
So
Absolutely.
to have that all available in the community is awesome. Now, you mentioned COVID-19, and so the Cancer Center is participating in a study that concerns COVID-19. Tell me exactly what that is. I think way back when COVID started, we had one of the docs on talking about a couple of studies that were going to be going on with it. But what's currently happening?
So one of the studies we have is funded by the NCI, and it's the NCI COVID study. What it's looking at is patients who have a cancer diagnosis, who are currently being treated for their cancer, and also have a diagnosis of COVID. So they have to recently have been diagnosed with COVID, which thanks to the vaccine, we're not having as many, but what they're looking at in this study is patients who have had COVID and a cancer diagnosis, do they have the same outcomes as patients who may not have had COVID? So
Right.
they're looking at the long-term outcome. They are drawing blood and looking at genetic differences in outcomes. So it's an exciting study. And at Mary Bird Perkins, we were like the first site in the country to put a patient on that study.
That-
Wow,
that's
that's
awesome.
fantastic.
Love being first in good things like
That's
that.
right.
Absolutely.
That's right. It's so important because we have such a high rate of cancer here in Louisiana and across the Gulf Coast. And so it's important for people to be treated somewhere near where their families are.
Absolutely.
And everybody that we know that has been to Mary Bird has just said that they have treated them wonderfully well, taken their hand, walked them through each and every step. But it's wonderful to hear, wow, $13.6 million grant. That's phenomenal. That's going to change people's lives.
Yeah,
For the better.
That's amazing. And I wish we could talk about all of those 50 different research trials, but I think it would be very interesting for folks to go on and see what all is happening there at the Cancer Center as far as the trials that are available to patients in our community.
Absolutely. And if they go onto the website, marybirdlake.org, and they're listed by disease site, and then once you see the clinical trial, you can click on it, and there's a link to the clinicaltrials.gov that gives all the detailed information on who is eligible to participate in those studies.
Right. So if someone has a skin cancer, they would click on that, then they would go down and see if there's any current ones related to that and get all the specific information so they could call and ask about it or ask their treating physician about it.
Correct.
I'd like to know a little bit about your background. We only have about a minute, but I want to know, how did you get into this?
So I actually started out as a clinical research nurse. So I would enroll patients on clinical trials, and basically we act as a guide for patients to make sure that things are scheduled according to a clinical trial. And then I moved up into a supervisor role, and then I moved into the director role. So I've been at Mary Bird Perkins since 2008. So it's been a while, yes,
Yeah.
but it's very rewarding.
Yes. Well, and you have the background and the passion for it, and that's so important because people really need the services that Mary Bird offers. And we love meeting people with Mary Bird. They're all interesting, and we learn something too.
Good.
Well, and there's a lot with the clinical trial that you've got to follow all the guidelines, make sure that everything is just right, because again, that's where you're getting the data that's going to help people in the future.
Correct.
Here and other places.
Absolutely.
We're so glad that you came, that you could come and share some of this with us. That's really exciting. We hope that you'll come back.
I'm happy
and
to.
As you have more clinical trials, maybe we can share a little more details of those that are maybe new as they're coming online. I think that would be really important.
So we've been talking with Cyndi Knox. Thank you for being with us, Cyndi. Make sure you go to marybirdlake.org. You can go to email clinicalresearch@marybird.com and find out much more details. And thanks again. And we're going to be having some music come up next to make us all feel good.
That's right. We'll be right back with Will Wesley and Phil Chandler. Stay tuned.